In 2018, I had the pleasure of hearing our next speaker at She Day in Winnipeg. I really have to say, from that whole day, something she said was a thing that stuck with me. So I hope tonight that you're going to be just as impacted by her story as I was. In 2019, Leah made history as the first woman to call a play-by-play for men's NCAA Division I hockey tournament for ESPN. Exactly. That's just the start. So Leah also made history a year prior as part of the first female hockey broadcast to call a professional hockey game for Sportnet, receiving national and international acclaim in the play-by-play role. In a 2018 article in the Globe and Mail, Scott Moore, former president of Sportsnet and NHL Properties, declared Leah a trailblazer. Doc Emmerich, Hall of Fame play-by-play broadcaster for NBC Sports, told The Athletic, he believes that Leah will be the first woman to do a play-by-play for an NHL team. Over the past 17 years, Leah has been an on-air presence for the largest networks in North America, ESPN, Sportsnet, and Hockey Night in Canada. Plus, as hopefully we all know, this past Sunday, on International Women's Day, she joined an all-female broadcast crew to call her very first NHL game. I'd like to welcome to the stage Leah Hextall.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up. That lady just tap danced for the last 10 minutes, so I'm pretty impressed. She could literally take my job right now, so thank you. Well, I just want to thank everybody so much for being here this evening. I'm thrilled to be here. When Cindy came and asked me to speak here in Portage, she asked me originally to speak on March 5th, and I said to her, ooh, I can't tell you why, but I can't make it. And I said, but it's a really good reason, and I promise you it'll pay off if you let me come and speak the next week. So thank you, Cindy, very much for doing that. I think what people need to know about Portage is this is a very special place to me. I was born at Portage General Hospital. I am from Portage La Prairie. Yes. This place has a very special place in my heart. My very first friend in the world, Amy Guy, is sitting right there. Kim Guy was there the day I was born. George is here as well, one of my mother's best friends. So Portage is very close to us. My mom immigrated here from England when she was 8. My dad grew up in Poplar Point, and he played for the Portage Terriers when they won the Centennial Cup back in 1974. So Larry Dewis will remember that as well. So thank you so much for having me today. So with that, we're going to get on with the show now that I've said my pleasantries right now. And this statement right here, you must do the things you think you cannot do. Jennifer was asked what she would tell her 16-year-old self, and I think that's what I would tell my 16-year-old self. In 2003, I walked through the doors of CKX Television in Brandon to start my career as a sports broadcaster. At that time, the idea of calling an NHL game, it didn't exist in my mind. It didn't exist in my career path. It didn't exist in any woman's career path because it didn't exist because it had never happened. Fast forward, and that same thing cannot be said. On March 8th, this past Sunday on International Women's Day, I think this picture speaks 1,000 words. Along with three-time Olympian Cassie Campbell-Pascal, I joined her in the booth, and I became the first woman to call a game in the National Hockey League in the play-by-play role on national television for Sportsnet. Yeah, I'm pretty damn proud of that too, I gotta say. But the fact of the matter is that to this historic moment, there were very many hurdles. And let's start right here. June 21st, 2016, I'm never going to forget that date for as long as I lived. Because the same company that I just made history with, they called me that day on the phone to tell me that my services with their company were no longer needed and that I was going to be laid off. I had been working for 13 years when I received a job at Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada after they signed a historic deal, 12 years, $5.2 billion, to be the national rights holder here in Canada for the NHL, the home of hockey. In 2003, as I mentioned, when I walked through the door at CKX, my dream wasn't to be a play-by-play announcer. My dream was to work for Hockey Night in Canada. And when they hired me in 2014, that dream came true. As far as I was concerned, I had made it. And here it was 2 years later, and I was being told I wasn't needed over the phone. It's very interesting when you have to thank someone for all they've done and giving you an opportunity when they are absolutely blowing up your world. How do you do that? You have to remember it's not personal, it's business. And the way I handled myself in that very moment by thanking them at that time was probably the most important thing I've done in my career. But things got worse before they got better. In fact, they got much worse. You know, it took me 13 years to earn my way to a national network from starting in Brandon. And for me, that meant sacrifice. I've always loved my career. I've been a career-first type of woman, and I have no regrets about that. But the sacrifice, as many women find, that if you're going to succeed in your career, something else is going to fall by the wayside. The idea of having it all does not exist. It is a term that as women we need to get rid of. It was created by men to sell deodorant in an advertising commercial back in the 80s, and they can all go screw themselves because they have no idea what it means. Now, that being said, the fact of the matter was sacrifice to me because I was focused on my career and I was all right with not having a family, but it did mean time away from my family and friends. It meant missing weddings and birthdays and holidays. It meant immigrating to a different country for a job in which I couldn't come back to Canada for a year and I didn't get to see my father for nearly 12 months. That's what sacrifice meant to me. But it's what you had to do in my business and in so many business to climb the ladder of success. You had to make your career the priority. And I don't regret that. But what I found that after I was laid off and I was looking for a new position in my industry, my success was hurting me more than it was helping me. My agent kept getting the same answer from companies when I was going out for jobs. She's fantastic, she's great, she's qualified, she's experienced, but we're going in a different direction. And that direction, because my industry was in trouble, was ultimately less experienced for less money. And we see that across the board in every industry nowadays. But then something happened. I was back in Brandon living with my mother, Liz, at 37 years of age. I had given up my place in Toronto because I didn't have a job. I was doing what I should do fiscally. I was doing what I should do as a smart woman. But when you're 38 living at your mother's on unemployment, you kind of realize that's not that sexy. Let's just put it that way. I couldn't get a job. The hockey season was getting ready to start, and then in the 11th hour, Fox Sports called my agent. The Anaheim Ducks needed a rinkside reporter. Wasn't exactly the job I wanted to walk into, but you do what you need to do in those moments, and I was thrilled with the opportunity. They said, we don't want to audition her, we know her work, we want to hire her. I was talking to HR, I had started my immigration papers for my visa. I was looking at places online where to live in Anaheim because we were 2 weeks out from the season and I knew it was going to be a tight turnaround. All this was going on. And then 2 days before the puck was about to drop on the NHL season, my agent called. And he said, Leah, guess what? They're going in a different direction. That direction was not having that position at all because they decided they couldn't afford it. That's how much trouble my industry was in. But what I realized in that moment is I was in trouble. There were no opportunities. This hockey season was starting, and I didn't have a job. As I mentioned, I was staying with my mom, so I walked into the bedroom that I was staying in, and I closed the door, and I just leaned back against that door, and I sunk down to the floor. And then it started. Just waves and waves of tears. And that little voice that was inside of me that had been so strong, telling me, you know what, Leah, you're going to be okay. You're going to get a job. You've worked too hard, kept saying to me, Leah, get off the floor. Stop crying and get off the floor. But the tears kept coming. Stop crying, Leah. Get off the floor. But I couldn't. It was because I had this huge weight on my shoulders, this weight that I couldn't push off. And it was the thing that I feared the most in the world. I had failed. I had done all of this, and I had failed. I couldn't get a job. But as they say, tomorrow is another day. And on that day, I decided to do something that I hate doing more than anything in the world. I asked for help. Right? I always used to think that asking for help was a sign of weakness in my career. And I think that often comes from being in a male-dominated career. You don't want to look like you don't know or that you need somebody to do something for you because you're proving it on your own. But what I realize now is that asking for help is the ultimate power move. Because by reaching out to this network that I had cultivated over 13 years of being a solid professional in my industry, they were willing to go out and speak on my behalf, to promote me, to say, you should hire her, you should give this young woman an opportunity. Notice how I put young in there. And what I realized was that that was me demonstrating my influence as a professional, my power over them, that I had all of these names in the business, top executives, people that I respect and admire that were willing to go out and speak on my behalf. But the thing is when they came to me and said, of course we'll help you, Leah, what do you need? I didn't have an answer for that. If I'm not a sports broadcaster, then who am I? I mean, seriously, do I have any other skills than talking sports? Well, of course I do. One of the things I find is that we often get defined by the title of our job or what we do on a daily basis, and we limit ourselves. Jennifer spoke about how thrilling it was the day that she decided to walk across the street and sign up for classes. Because we can't limit what we do, because we all have transferable skills. And I had those skills, I just didn't realize it. And we become victims of what we do, and we have to understand that when we look at the skills that we have, they can lead to different opportunities. Because all my years of doing this, hi Sid, how are you? Any cute? Yeah, I'm going to say it. They talk about us all the time, so I may as well. Well, all the years of doing that, well, this is where it led me. This is not where I thought it would lead me. To the steps of the Manitoba Legislative Building. Once again, using that power move. Asking for help, utilizing my network. A member of my network for many years, because of my sports involvement, was the Premier of Manitoba, the Honorable Brian Pallister. And you know what? All of my years of presenting, writing, content creation, organization, branding, and most of all, presenting when it matters most, when that little red light goes on and being able to handle any situation that's thrown at me in a pinch, those had worth. And I went into that building, I recognized some needs that they needed in their communications department, and lo and behold, they looked at my skill set and it had worth to them, and they hired me. I'm a part of the executive council for the Premier of Manitoba. I handle his events and his multimedia, and that is now my job. And in that job, I have learned how government works. I never thought I would be in politics. I have this entirely new set of skills. I'm a director of department. I manage people. I've hired 4 women who work for me. I call us the Babs, the badass bitches. And, you know, I look at all of that, and this is not where I ever thought I would be, but when I look at my resume, it is so much better, and I'm so much more proud of it than I was when I just had my broadcasting on it, because I have utilized all of the skills that I cultivated as a broadcaster and transferred them into this job where I am now creating new skills which are going to continue to benefit me no matter what ends up happening into my life. And that is the important part. But more important than that is that this all happened because I asked for my opportunity. And here's the thing. Don't wait for your opportunity. You need to ask for it. You need to create it. And with this new confidence of asking for my opportunity, I did turn back around and look at my first love, and that is broadcasting. The thing is that I remembered that no one was hiring me. And there weren't a lot of jobs in my position as a host or a ringside reporter that were available. And I knew that I was going to have to reinvent myself in order to stay in the game. When I thought about what's the one thing that you still want to do if you can get back into broadcasting, the one thing I hadn't done that I would regret if I walked away was I'd never covered an Olympics. But the fact of the matter is the Olympics, only 2 networks in North America have them, CBC and NBC. They have their pick of the litter and they have a ton of staff, and it's a very hard assignment to get. But you know what you don't hear is women calling women's hockey. And that's what entered my brain. And at this time in 2017, I thought to myself, why the hell not? Are women not calling women's sports? And that's what made me decide to go into play-by-play. The thing is that I didn't know another single female who was calling play-by-play because there were none. So I needed someone to guide me through this. And I'm a very big believer in mentors. And when I pick a mentor, I pick him well. And this is Doc Emmerich. Mike Doc Emmerich is a Hall of Fame broadcaster for NBC Sports. He has done it all. He is the greatest voice in the game, and he is my mentor. And he became my mentor because once again, I went back to that network. I found someone to introduce us. He took the phone call, and that's who I spoke to about calling play-by-play. The very first discussion I ever had was with Doc Emmerich about it. And by the end of that phone call, he said, Leah, I can tell by the way you talk, I can tell by your resume, I can tell that you can do this. And he gave me the advice that this is what you need to do. Exactly what I did back 70 years ago when I first started. That's a little bit of an emphasis on that. He's not quite that old. But he told me to get into a rink wherever I could and just start calling. Just start calling out loud to yourself, record it, and see how it goes. Well, when Doc Emmerich tells you to do something, you do it. And with that, I decided to walk to Manitoba Moose games, sit in the crowd, and I was the crazy lady sitting in the crowd at the hockey game talking out loud to herself. And I didn't even have a beer with me, so I couldn't even, say that that was at fault for it. But that's exactly what I did. And so I did it. And I was absolutely horrible. I can't tell you how horrible I was. But the fact of the matter is that I was doing it, and I thought to myself, why not? Why not see if anyone is interested? And with that, I picked up the phone. I picked up the phone, and I called the network that had laid me off. I called the man who had laid me off. And I said to him, I know you have the Canadian Women's Hockey League, and I think it's time for a female voice to call the female game, and I want a shot. They have 4 games. And he said to me, absolutely, we're going to give you that shot. So with that, I made my play-by-play debut in the Canadian Women's Hockey League on January 18th of 2018. Again, a date I'll never forget. I won't forget that day because I was standing beside Cassie Campbell-Pascal about to call the game between the Toronto Furies and the Calgary Inferno, and I had 2 garbage cans. One for recycling and one for when I was going to throw up. And that's not even a lie, because I was that nervous. I've never been that nervous in my life, to the point when they dropped the puck, I blacked out, and I couldn't remember any of the numbers that were skating around on the ice. But eventually, it came to me. And with that, we called a few more games, and then I had a chance to call the CWHL Championship game, the Clarkson Cup, and with that, there was a little bit of history that went along with it. So there it was, in the books. And with that, as I started to gain some momentum and gain some notoriety calling play-by-play as a female, a little network known as ESPN, known as the worldwide leader in sports, noticed. And they signed me up to call the NCAA Division I college hockey tournament, which made me the first woman to do so. So with all this momentum behind me, my mentor, Doc Emmerich, he continued that. He was at the Stanley Cup final, and he was getting interviewed about himself. But what did he turn the article into? Discussing me. And this is so important because he used his influence and his name to support me, not help me, support me. And that's what's so important with our male allies, because they still rule the world. They still are at the top of the food chain as CEOs, and the men still make many of the decisions. But this man was willing to stand there and go on the record and say, Leah Hextall will be the first woman to call in the NHL. And I say to him, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. But the fact of the matter is I can't appreciate it more. But then after this happened, with all this momentum going on, the Canadian Women's Hockey League folded. And there goes those 4 games that I was guaranteed by Sportsnet. When this season started, I didn't have a single game to call. I was back to square one. So I had to go back to basics, once again utilizing that network. I worked in Winnipeg at CTV Television for 7 years, and in that time, I got to know the commissioner, Kim Davis, of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League very well. And I reached out to him and I said, Kim, you have a streaming service. I'd like to call some of your games. And Kim said, let's do it. At the beginning of the season at the MJHL Showcase, I started to call for them. And at that time, I met this lovely gentleman named Dave Anthony. And again, very important to have these male allies. Because after Dave provided color commentary for me, he's usually the voice of the Steinbach Pistons. And he said to me, anytime you want to come call a game, I will step aside and you can call. And I took him up on that opportunity. It was the only way I was going to get reps, and I thank him so much for doing that. Because if he hadn't done that, I'm not quite sure where I would be. Because in December, I received a phone call. I was sitting in my office in the Manitoba Legislative, and my cell phone rang, and it was Alison Redmond, one of the lone female executive producers for hockey in this country. Picked up the phone, a little bit of small chat. I thought, oh, I wonder why Allie's calling me. And she said, Leah, we got a game for you, March 8th, International Women's Day. We're going to do this big thing. It's going to be mostly women. It's going to be great. It's going to be in Calgary. She's going on. And I'm just thinking in my head, awesome, a junior game. That's excellent. I was so excited about it. And then she goes, so it's going to be Calgary, so it'll be the Flames versus Vegas. And that's the moment where the phone almost fell right out of my hand. And I went, oh, so this is an NHL game. And she said, yes, Leah, it's an NHL game. Well, panic set in shortly after I hung up the phone because here it was. This was no joke. This was going to happen. And as special as it was, that one call, well, it led to a full female broadcast, not only in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. But the reason that this could be done is because I stepped into the play-by-play role. And I'll tell you, I'll never forget that call. The fact of the matter is, though, is that what I'm most proud of is that I was brave enough to suck at something new. And it's not easy to do. It's not easy to decide when you're in your comfort zone to step out of it. But greatness has never been achieved from a comfort zone. You have to push. And the difference between the woman standing here today and that woman who couldn't get off the floor is the fact now that I understand my worth. I understand that I'm going to be okay. I understand that I can turn things around. But most importantly, the difference is that I have made history 3 times in less than 2 years, and the reason why is because I have asked for my opportunity. As women, we tend to think if we work hard enough and we do the job well, that when there is that opening, someone's going to come to us and say, you know what, they've been doing a really good job, we're going to put them in there. That's not how this world works. That is wrong. I really admire the way that men can walk into a room and say, I deserve to make more money. I would like this position. I'm interested in this, and not think twice about it, whether they have the full skill set or not. I did not have the full skill set for this when I started, but as of Sunday, I sure did, and I proved it to myself. So what I can say to you is that don't wait for your opportunity. Create your opportunity by asking for your opportunity. It is the best advice that I can give any woman in this world at this time, because it will pay off if you're willing to work for it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Leah Hextall. I appreciate all of you for listening to me here today, and I thank you so much. Thank you very much. Are you talking to me? Thank you. Thank you. Are we going to sit down?
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. Well, first of all, I have to say that last year, International Women's Day, I emceed an event here in Portage that Jennifer Botterill spoke at, and now this year you. So could you ask Cassie what she's doing next year?
I will definitely do that. Trust me. You'd love to hear her speak. She's great.
Perfect, perfect. So when I heard you at She Day, the thing that got me was when you told the story about when you were going to go to Anaheim and you hit that door and you hit that floor and you cried your eyes out. Talking about your badass bitches at work, tell me you must have a tribe of women and people around you in your personal life that helps you get up off that floor. Tell us about that.
Well, it's really simple. It starts with my mom, Liz. It's just the bottom line. You know, strong women raise strong women. And I was raised by, I believe, one of, she's got this way about her where she has such grace in the way she handles almost every situation. And she's almost annoying because she's so good at everything, except for sports. It's the only thing my sister and I can beat her at, so we're really happy whenever she tries to play one. But, I have her. But then on top of that, I just mentioned my sister. I have an older sister. She's 2 years older than me. And the fact of the matter is that they literally, especially this year with losing my dad in July, I have felt their hands on my back this entire time, just keeping me up and then pushing me forward. And it truly, without them, none of this would have happened because I'm the person I am because of those two women.
Awesome, awesome. So, sorry, I'm wrong. Mike, the man who...
Oh, Doc Emmerich, you got it. Yeah, Mike, Doc Emmerich, yeah.
Right? You buy him a Christmas gift every year?
No, I don't, but maybe I should.
Maybe you should.
That's a good.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, I think it's whether it's women or men empowering us is so important. You're in a different role now in the government for sure, and especially the job you do, you're putting out stuff on our social media. What did you call it? What's your name for what?
Oh, I'm the Director of Events and Multimedia.
Multimedia, right? So that includes Facebook, Twitter, all those fun things. With it comes all the good and all the negative. So in your daily life, you're going to see things you put out there, get all the comments or whatever. But even in your other role, right? We see the comments of that. Even women saying, a woman calling a game? How do you handle that sort of stuff?
Well, I've been dealing with it now for so long that you just get to the point where I don't know if anybody gets immune from hearing something. And some of the comments are quite ridiculous, but I've learned to tune most of it out. But what I can say about that, which I think is such a positive thing, is that when I called my game on Sunday, I really was ready to be torn apart. But when I looked at social media, when I looked at the feedback that I was getting, it truly was so incredibly supportive. Yes, there is some negativity, but those guys are in their basement and they're just losers. So,
keyboard warriors, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I might not be able to get a date, but that's because I work a lot. But they can't get one for other reasons. But the fact is that, I couldn't believe how supportive it was. It actually almost shocked me, but I think that says something. I really think that people saw this and they understand that we still have so much room to grow, and representation matters. Because as I mentioned, when I walked through the door at CKX, I didn't think about being a play-by-play person because I never saw it and I never heard it. But there might have been one little girl who heard my voice along with Cassie on Sunday. And they're going to grow up in an entirely different generation where this can become the norm. And I think that's what matters. And so it doesn't really matter what anybody else says out there, because that's what matters.
Absolutely, absolutely. So last night actually, I timed my first 10N curling game, and I had to
Congratulations.
Thank you. I had to pay attention the whole game. So it was hard, actually. And curling is very slow pace compared to what you do. So besides having your puke pail ready, what are some of your rituals to get ready to do this? Do you have any?
Well, I'm a little superstitious. And I'm a Hextall, so I'm a head case, and that's just the way it works in my family. But the fact is that I usually never eat before I have a big performance. It's just something I really never feel like it. But most of all, it's, taking that deep breath, closing your eyes, and then going. But the biggest thing is, and I'm wearing it today, is this is my grandfather, Brian Hextall's Hockey Hall of Fame ring, and it was left to my dad, who left it to me. So I wear this on my hand every time I do a game, and I often am found rubbing the symbol of it, and it's going to get worn out after Sunday because I was rubbing it pretty hard because I was a little nervous. But the fact is that that's pretty much about it. But the biggest thing for me is just I come into every game I do as prepared as possible. I over-prepare because that's the way that you can find success. And I do feel as a female that you're put still under a different spotlight. The mistakes you make are going to be amplified. And I know that going in, and I'm okay with that. That just means I have to do a little bit more work, and I'm okay with that. Awesome.
I found it interesting because I think I was under the perception as people in roles that you've been in. You're a celebrity, right? We'd call that, yeah. Right, celebrity. Is I was really surprised to know that you don't have an agent going out there to get those jobs for you. It sounds like maybe you do, but the fact is that you're making those calls and saying, hey, I can do this. Like, you don't have an agent, do you?
I have an agent for my American work. But I handle most of my stuff up here in Canada. We're a little different in Canada. I don't know if it's just the people we are, but the networks don't really like agents all that much. They'll still deal with them, but I find when you get your agent from New York calling up somebody in Canada, it's almost better, especially in the hockey community, which is such a small community. It's better just to make those phone calls on yourself. But then once we start talking money, I let him earn his, and I slide that part over. So, but I still make the phone calls to a lot of the people just to, keep track of them. And I feel that, the person who can best represent myself is myself.
Yeah, that's awesome and very brave to make those calls for sure. So you mentioned how much important mentors are to you. So have you had the opportunity yourself to now become a mentor?
I have, and it's not just in my broadcast role. As you're working at different networks, you'll have younger people than you who are more junior, and they'll ask you to go and watch tapes with them and give them feedback and input and how they can help their on-air performance. But I've really found in my government role, the women who work for me are quite a bit younger than me, and they keep me young, which is what I love. They make me feel young every day with their energy. But they are younger, and I look at them in their 20s, and I think to myself, oh, I've been there. And so, just giving them those little pieces of advice. But the biggest thing that I tell the women who work for me is they'll often come to me and say, oh, I need this person to do this. And I always tell them, use your voice. You have one. Use it. Tell people where you want them. Go out there and gain that confidence, because confidence is key to everything. Once you have it, it can't be taken away from you. So if you have it, you use your voice. And so when I'm working with younger women, that's one of the things I tell them is, even if the voice shakes, don't be afraid to use it.
Absolutely. I think your message is so amazing, especially with the part of, I often find young people or people get stuck in their jobs. So they're a cashier, they're a gas pump attendant. Do you have any advice for people where they have a job, and how you took from being a sports broadcaster, like you said, you have all these skills of presenting and writing and all of that, and you took it into new. How would somebody start to do that, where they could stop and look at what they do now and look at what all those skills are that they have in that job?
Well, I think it just really starts with, when I was getting out of high school, I think asking kids in high school, what do you want to do with your life, is such a big question at that age, and when I look back at it now. But I was going to be a lawyer. I went to university for the first few years taking political science, thinking I was going to be a law student, and thank God that didn't happen. I love lawyers, though, just so everybody knows. I love lawyers if you're a lawyer. But the fact was, it became very clear to me that I wanted to do something I was passionate about, because, I just believe that if you're passionate about something, you're going to excel in it. And so it's very easy to find out what your skills are when you figure out what you're passionate about, because usually they correspond with each other.
Absolutely. Well, I just hope that you continue to tell this story, because it's not just about the rise to success. It's about being there and then losing it and then coming right back up. And I'm glad to meet you and get to know you, and I hope everybody in this room feels the same. So thank you, Leah Hextall, for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.